Wulf, and it's a Club Penguin video. It's another Waddle Forever tutorial. So, in the first video I made about Waddle Forever, I kind of showed the install process on Windows, and I mentioned in that video, I think, that it was also available for Linux. So I wanted to make a video showing how to install Waddle Forever on Linux. On Linux, it's a little bit of a more involved process than it was on Windows, because on Windows there's just a normal installer and it kind of does a lot for you, whereas on Linux you've got to use terminal a bit, and it's a little bit more complicated, but also still not that hard to do. So anyway, let's get into it. By the way, I'm running Ubuntu, and I believe it's version 24.04. I will check, and then if it's different, I will pop it up on the screen what version it is. I have it running on a 2014 Mac Mini, and this is a fresh install of it, so there is pretty much nothing installed on here other than what is available through Ubuntu's installer. So first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and open up a web browser, and we're going to go to Waddle Forever. When we go to the Waddle Forever website, instead of Windows this time, we're going to click on Linux, and it's going to bring us to the GitHub page, which explains how to do it. So there's a couple of things that you need to install before installing Waddle Forever itself. For one, curl. So this is the first time we're going to be needing to use terminal here, and we're going to need to use terminal a good amount throughout this process. Now, curl is pretty easy to install. There's a bunch of tutorials online about it, but pretty much a lot of them tell you to do the same thing, which is first sudo apt update and then from there we're going to want to go sudo apt install curl. If I could spell, sudo apt install curl. Now curl is installed, a lot of the tutorials will also tell you to go ahead and check the version of curl to make sure that it's actually installed, and so that's the first thing we need to install. Then another thing we're going to need is fuse. So this actually has a tutorial linked to it here on the GitHub page for Waddle Forever. This is relatively simple too, so we're also going to go back into terminal again. Not help. We're going to go into terminal again, and this is one of the things that can kind of depend on which version of Linux you're running, I believe, but since we are on Ubuntu 24.04 or above, we can just go ahead and type in these two commands in a terminal and it will install. So we're going to do this repository first. And then we're going to install this fuse thing. I think it's a library. And now that is also installed. So we're going to go back to the GitHub page for Waddle Forever. And the next step is, well, the next step is actually to create a folder. So we can go ahead and close terminal for now because we're going to need to open terminal a specific location for the next steps. So I'm just going to create this folder here on my desktop. I don't really think it matters where you create the folder so long as the next steps in terminal you do within that folder. But I'm going to go ahead and do kind of like I did on Windows and make Waddle Forever a folder. And there we go. So now we're going to go ahead and open this folder and then open terminal in the folder, or open the folder in terminal, I guess, really. And then we're going to go ahead and enter in this command. Now, since a lot of this uses terminal, you're going to want to be sure to be careful while you're typing to make sure you're typing everything correctly, because otherwise you might get an error or something might not download correctly or any number of things. So just be careful as you type. And also remember to close these parentheses. Last time I did it wrong and it didn't quite do it right. So now it's downloading all this stuff, I think, from the GitHub page into this folder we created. And while it's doing that, I just want to take a minute to mention that this could vary depending on which version of Linux you're running, because there are a lot of different versions of Linux, and Linux is so user customizable that there is just like a lot that could be different about the way that you might have this set up as compared to me. This is just like a normal install of Ubuntu, like nothing crazy, but there are so many versions of Linux. Another thing too is that Linux is used a lot for various types of development and web design and stuff, and if you're doing any of that type of work, that could mess with your Waddle Forever install, because originally I was using Linux on this Mac Mini for some web development stuff. I was doing some website experiment ideas and stuff, and the first time I tried to install this, it actually wasn't working properly because of some work that I had done previously with some of that website stuff, I think. So keep all that in mind when you go to do this. So now we have that stuff all done, and we're going to go into the finish installation thing. And I'm just going to reopen terminal just to be safe. I think you could probably do it in the same terminal thing, but again, reopen terminal in that folder, or open that folder in terminal, whichever. We're going to go ahead and type these other commands that are here. And it would be great if I knew how to type. And now the last thing we're going to want to do is actually try to run the game. So it says that whenever you want to run the game, you're going to want to open terminal in the game folder and then run this command. And now that is up and running. It also says when you go ahead and click the Waddle Forever client app image that it says to run it serverless. I don't really fully understand what the serverless versus like servered version is, because on Windows a similar error would pop up sometimes, and it didn't really ever seem to affect anything if you were running serverless or not. So I don't know if maybe that's like a leftover from code that was borrowed from somewhere else or something. But anyway, now we have Club Penguin, and it works pretty much the same as it does on Windows in terms of like how it runs on Linux. You log in, make your Penguin, password doesn't seem to matter. And it seems to create your Penguin when you log in and stuff. If you want to know some more about the various things like in general with this, the version of this video that I made originally on Windows, I kind of talk a little bit more about some of the things that I think are going on here. But yeah, so that is how to install Waddle Forever on Linux, and I probably might have more tutorials with Linux stuff related to Waddle Forever in the future. I'm not sure. I think past this point it doesn't really differ that much from the Windows version in terms of installing mods and stuff like that, because there's like a mods folder and everything in here. So it seems to just kind of be the install process is different. But anyway, thank you guys for watching this tutorial. Just wanted to make it because I know that this can be a little bit daunting. Linux can be a little bit hard to use sometimes. I barely know how to use Linux, so if I could do this, you can probably also do this. It's really just a matter of knowing what commands to type in. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in other stuff in the future, and bye-bye.